Right.
Okay, it's 4:30, so I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Park Committee for Wednesday, September 27th, 2017. Present are Alderman John Vanderleest, Alderman Chris Weary, myself, Alderman Dave Menig, and Alderman Andy Nicholson is excused until he gets here. He did call to indicate that he will be a little late, so he will be here at some point. So the first thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 13th, 2017.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Vanderleest, seconded by Alderman Weary to approve the minutes of the September 13th meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Weary, seconded by Alderman Vanderleest to adopt the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The first item on here is consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman Moore to review council action and subcommittee work regarding decommission of the 9/11 memorial. I think the language they were using was de-accession of, right?
Decommission? Oh, it's spelled wrong.
Okay, well, at any rate,
Mr. Chairman, I thought this was a referral back from the council.
right, it was referred back
It
by
had nothing to do
council.
with the communication.
Yeah, that's correct. It was referred here from the council. I think there was a lot of interesting information presented at the council that, you know, many of us hadn't heard before, at least I hadn't heard. And it really is appropriate that the Park Committee take a look at the information, get to the facts. I'm sure a lot of people have questions about some of the detail. And, you know, I think the first thing we need to do is to try to gather the facts as best we can, and then try to come up with a course of action. So, any discussion by the committee? Alderman
Sure.
Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree that I don't think we're going to come up with a final solution on it tonight. I saw several things that I wrote down here. One is, you know, what exactly are the items that were donated? You know, can we get a complete list of that, or as complete as possible? Are there any restrictions from the donors on the use of those items? Are there any government restrictions on what items can be in the monument? I know that came up. And then what's physically wrong with the monument, and get some cost estimates to repair the monument. I don't think we're ready to answer half those tonight, so, but
Right.
I'd like to get a start on it.
Okay, Donnie has some information she wanted to share, just so everybody's clear on what we're doing here.
Well, as you know, this is referred back at the last council meeting. Staff handed out, we gave you a original proposal that was put when we built the statue in 2004, when it was approved. The memorial was donated to the city. The memorial was dedicated on June 1, 2005. Shortly after it was installed, the granite began to fail. The etching wore off, and there were 7 large cracks occurred. Obviously, no one knew that this would occur this soon to that donation. The donors knew that the city did not have the money to repair the monument, so they came forward a few years later and requested to begin a fundraising campaign to fix the damaged granite. The fundraising effort was approved at the Park Committee on October 27, of 2009. Shortly after this meeting, the donor group began fundraising and planning for the repairs. Park staff had several discussions with the donor groups and an engineering firm who developed construction plans for the necessary repairs. The engineering firm, the group hired an alternative to a method of installing new granite so that it would not crack again. Staff did review the plans in 2009. In 2009, the donor group provided an estimate cost for repairs. The cost to purchase the granite was $15,000. The artwork and etching of the granite was approximately $18,000, and the installation of the granite was $3,000 to $5,000, for a total cost somewhere between $36,000 and $38,000. They were hoping to get a contractor to donate the services for the installation, which would save $3,000 to $5,000. Now, keep in mind, This is an estimate from 2009, so it's now several years old. So we would have to go back and get some new projections on what this might cost. The city did not receive any donated funds from the group towards the repair of the memorial. After about 1 to 2 years of discussion, the donor group stopped working on the project. Some discussion occurred with the city council, at the city council, about items being embedded in the concrete base. Other than the group saying it was buried in the concrete, we have no reason to doubt, but the city has no written documentation in any of their files about this. We did go through the file, and we couldn't find any information on this. When the project was approved, it was not in their original proposal to the city, so there is no documentation on that at all. The law department has begun researching what would need to be done if the decision to continue with this memorial. Keep in mind that the current plan for the removal of the memorial was only the towers and the I-beam and granite was to be removed. The concrete base was going to remain intact. The first step would be to get detailed documentation from the donors as to what was embedded in the concrete. Once we identify what exactly it is there, we can determine the appropriate action. The law department also contacted the NYC medical examiner to determine if they had any records on where the remains of the ground zero were laid to rest. The city has yet to hear back from them at this point. Another question that came up at the council meeting was, were there any commitments made as it relates to the I-beam? Staff did go back to the file, and in the 2004, the donor group sent an email to the park staff which stated what the primary commitments of the NYC WTC committee were. Those were the following. There would be no fees charged to view the memorial. The site must be visible, and it must be from a major traveled road or street, and it could not be hidden behind trees, buildings, or structures. The site must have easy access to street or road. Adequate 24-hour free parking had to be available with at least a minimum of 25 parking spots. Easy bus turnaround or adequate bus turnaround access, and electricity to the site. The city has no record of any other commitments that were made. This was in an email from the donor group, not a copy of the contract with the New York City WTC committee. At this point, it comes down to whether the city wants to come up with the funding to repair the memorial or continue to remove it. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Donnie. I just want to clarify, I'm not sure if everybody is aware, but when this was discussed by the city since June, the intent was to do something respectful, to honor the people who gave their lives and made sacrifices as a result of what happened on 9/11. And it was a situation where we had a task force that looked for a respectable way to handle things, and the idea was to have in the new public safety building, police and fire building that's being discussed, to have a nice memorial in that building that would have perhaps an interactive display about, to educate children and other people about what happened on 9/11. So, although it was changing the focus from the monument along the river, it was still supposed to be a respected thing that would not only be a memory for us of what happened on 9/11, but an educational tool for future generations and so on. And so I think every effort was made by our departments, police, fire, public works, to try to handle this in as respectful of a manner as we could. Now, the motion that came out of the Public Arts Commission that this committee supported was to temporarily move the beam to an indoor location in the lobby of the police department where it could be displayed, and have it rotate between there and fire stations until a permanent public safety, police and fire building is built, and then to develop a more interactive, prominent display in the lobby of that building. And of course, none of us had any idea of a lot of the background here, and you know, I think it was eye-opening for us at the council meeting when information was brought forward. In addition to the questions that Alderman Weary had, I had a couple others myself. You know, I know there was a reference to a 20-page plan to fix it. There was reference to a binder of documents. You know, I'd like to see all of that so that we know exactly what we're talking about here. I think it's important for the city to know what's in there, to know what the commitments are, not only for the decision we have to make today, but in going toward the future. And, you know, it seems that, you know, there may have been a rush to get this in. It was the first 9/11 monument around. And, you know, we may have been a little lax in some of the decisions that were made at the time. But the city certainly, you know, I think everyone on the council wants to see some permanent memorial, suitable memorial for 9/11. So is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to open the floor, or are there other discussions? Alderman Zimmer.
I just want to do a little housekeeping. First, is there a written report from, was it a subcommittee of the Public Arts Committee, or was it the Public Arts Committee itself?
It was a subcommittee.
Okay, it was a subcommittee because you had said
Okay.
something came from the,
Yeah, I called it a task force, but it was a subcommittee that the Public Arts Commission set up to
okay,
take.
were there members of the Public Arts Commission on that subcommittee?
I think Alderman Scannell was.
That's it.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
And who named that committee? Did you folks do it?
I think the Public Arts Commission itself named it.
And where did they get the names
If
from?
I may, with a reference from Alderman Weary back in the winter time to get police and fire involved, and obviously DPW because they have the.
Just trying to do the housekeeping here.
Right.
So there was a subcommittee that was studying this, and did they bring a report to you?
We did get a report at our meeting, see what date was it, in August? August 9th, I believe it was. We did get a report on it, and it was presented to us. I don't have the exact report in front of me right now, but we did get a report, and they talked about the condition of it. They talked about the need for funds to do anything with it if you were to do that. They talked about what they felt, they gave us a recommendation of a suitable alternative to locate it in the public safety building. We did get a report on it.
Was it a long report or short report?
No, it was about a 2-page report, if I remember correctly.
And it basically just said, talked about the condition of the monument and an alternative to repairing it.
Right.
Were you given costs at that time?
I don't think there were any exact costs at that point. There have been different numbers throughout the years. I found a newspaper article from 2009 that talked about 30 to 35,000. I know there were other people in the community that were trying to raise funds that said that their goal was about 40,000. And I know when Alderman Weary brought in a communication earlier this year asking for stadium money, some of the excess stadium money, the figure was $80,000. So no.
Was the information that our Director Donnie read off today, was that given to you at that time?
Not in that form, no. We
Was it
didn't.
given at all? I mean, Donnie shake your head, no.
Yeah, we didn't, have any information on what had happened in 2009 at that point. It was before the Park Committee. I've been reading, it's kind of interesting to read the minutes.
Made aware at any time that, at the time, people were interested in helping raise money for it?
In 2009, yes. It's kind of interesting in looking at the minutes of the meetings. When the monument was first approved
It won't happen anymore.
in 2004, Alderman Zimmel chaired the Park Committee. And in 2009, the issue came up about, it was really a request from the WTC 9/11 Penn Team Memorial Committee to raise funds to restore the memorial.
Well, it's just the reason I'm asking these questions, Mr. Chairman, is I don't believe, at least from what feedback I get from committee members and other members of the council, is that you're really unaware of a lot of things that were going on. And it seems to me that subcommittee was delinquent in its efforts when they didn't bother to involve people who were involved in it to start with, or to bring any of the history to you, or even talk about the things that Donnie had said here. Donnie, would you just refresh me again about what you were saying about how to have so many parking stalls and all that sort of thing? What was that document?
That was from, let me just look it up here.
Is that in the package?
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
It's not in the packet that I just gave you, but that was an email to the previous park director before Donnie, and it was when we were selecting locations for the memorial. We talked about a lot of different locations. The group sent an email to the park director stating, here are the conditions for selecting the memorial. These are the commitments we made when we accepted the
So as a
IB.
condition of the $250,000 effort that they're making, they were asking those things be honored, correct?
Correct.
Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
They didn't say they wouldn't do it, they said that those were the commitments that they made to the group that gave them the I-beam.
Okay. All right. Well, was any of that brought to you? Obviously not.
No, the minutes of the meeting do indicate that at that time in 2004, they were looking at other sites around the state as well.
Yes.
And around the country.
I remember that Georgia, the surgeon, was it Eckert or something like that? And Green Bay ended up being selected, and it was built here. And they saw defects in it relatively early in the early years of the monument after it was constructed. And I think we have indications that the group was interested in raising money. And in fact, indeed did. And there's some argument about whether it was rejected by the city or not. They tell a story that the mayor had said to them that, well, we own the monument now, we're going to handle it the way we want to handle it. And it was basically dropped at that point in time. And of course, the facility was left to deteriorate, essentially, even though there was effort. They had contacted Myron Construction, and that had put a plan together to rebuild it correctly and to avoid the problems that were being had with it. But it was instead just neglected. It was basically neglected for the last 6-7 years since that effort was made. And I don't know, it seems to me that anybody who's studying it would first want to talk to the people who made a big $250,000 effort. And it is really a nice site. When you go there, it's the landscaping around it, everything is very nice. It's got adequate parking. It is really a good site. It's something that probably 10,000 or more cars a day pass by it, and it is a potential tourist attraction. And that the committee would just come and say, well, we're going to commission it maybe into part of it into a public safety building, which is not even on the drawing boards yet. And kind of really in total conflict with the whole idea of the conditions that they said that they were needed to meet just to get the steel from Mayor Giuliani at the time's office into the city of Green Bay. But it just seems to me that this was just kind of brought in along the side. I guess there were people looking at it, but we of course weren't looking at it. You hear me complain all the time that I feel like, the councilmen got to be on committees that get in on the nitty-gritty of things, not just the tail end of things. And I think this is another case in point of that. And I think we just need to redouble our efforts at this point in time to see what the costs, to the best of our ability, would be, and then see if there's some interest in the community to help some fundraising. And I think the city can participate in it because it is like a small park for us here. Maybe we can even improve it a little bit. I think it could use a couple more park benches or seating facility around it to let people come there and maybe have their lunch in that area or something like that. But I think it's less than honorable to do anything except really fix what needs to be fixed and pay for it in whatever way we can, whether it's 50-50, 75-25, or 100% one way or the other. But I think we need to make a commitment to it. To take it out of a site where people pass by and it meets the initial reason for it being, and to put it away in a vestibule of a new safety building or something like that, doesn't give credit to it. That's not something that people are going to pass by or are going to notice it. It's like putting it into the museum. It's tucking it away. You've preserved it for antiquity, I guess, but it doesn't become the meaningful monument that I think it is right now. Now, I think Mr. Scannell called it a disaster, and it probably is. It needs to be done correctly. But I think it's part of our landscape on the west side of the river. I think we need to do what needs to be done to correct it and give it the honor that it deserves, because that's something really we, the United States of America, doesn't want to forget about. To put it into a little corner somewhere, or even if it's in a place where people might see. I mean, people aren't walking into the police station every single day. I mean, it's just, I don't think that's an adequate, that isn't an adequate replacement for what we have right now. It's not a good alternative. I think the best alternative is to look for people who are willing to help donate services, materials, or efforts to do fundraising, to do the job right and have it be a lasting monument in our community here.
Okay. Any questions by the committee?
Make a motion to open the floor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to open the floor to hear from interested parties. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll take comments from anyone here that would like to speak with the committee. Bernie, did you want to go first?
Sure.
Sure, come on up.
Thank you. I guess most of you, everybody knows me. But back when the election started to take place, I was one of the elected officials that was invited to participate in the groundbreaking. And I thought that was a great honor because a gentleman that's a very close friend of mine, his brother was on one of the planes that crashed into the towers, and he and I still communicate on a regular basis. He does live out of town, but we do communicate several times a year. And I've got numerous emails. I've received quite a few comments from people. Being retired, I'm out for breakfast and coffee and so forth, while hopefully the rest of you are working. But the general feeling is unanimous that something has to be done, and we all know that. Will it be done in the exact same design? Most likely not. There's probably a much better way, much better material, a much easier way, well, I don't want to say easy, a much more efficient way to display this. Overall, no one has said to me, gee, I think we should move this into the police department, the fire department, any place like that. And we are not taking away from anything of the police and fire that perished that day. But this monument, in discussing this with people, was put up there to honor the citizens who died and gave their lives that day. And that monument is a standing memorial to those people. And to take it and literally hide it away where a very limited amount of people will see it is almost an injustice. It's borders right across the street from my district that I serve, and I drive past that on a regular basis. I go to meetings down at the museum. I have dinner at some of the restaurants in the area, and people are always around there looking at it or taking selfies or group pictures, things like that. And it is an attraction. And if you move that down into the various police, fire stations and that, I feel, and I think most people feel that I've talked to, that that's going to be somewhat of a deterrent to actually park, find a spot, go walk around and go in and look at it. And it's going to be a forgotten monument. So I would recommend that you leave it where it is, but let's recondition it, redesign it, figure a way to preserve the I-beam, whether it's encased in glass or what have you, and keep it at its present location. Fundraising, Mr. Zima had referred to, isn't that difficult. I counted the people in the room. If we all want to throw a $20 bill in here before we leave, you got $600 right off the bat. That's how quick it can go. And I know you're going to have some big donors. I know personally I would donate to something like that. Every time there's a good cause, whether it's something for public safety or various other causes within the community. We've had the various park things that we've done. I'm always a participant in those. And Chris, thank you for some of the actions you've taken on those things. And the water park has been a very good success on the west side. And people never mind contributing to those. And I know you'd have an outpouring from the community support if we redesign that, recreate it, and put it back where it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bernie. Okay, others. Barb, would you like to speak with us now? Barb? would you-
Good, thanks.
No? Okay, Lynn?
Lynn Austin, 1449 Morrow in Green Bay. Is that correct that people put in $250,000 for that? That's really a lot of money. You could buy 2 houses for that. And the problem that I have is, it seems like our city's not real good about respecting when citizens are paying big amounts of money for stuff. Like we don't preserve it or take care of it. It's sometimes I think our city acts fickle, where they don't, they'll do a big planting and the next thing you know, 10 years down the road, they cut all the trees down and do something else. And I just think we should more learn to stay the course, to make good plans, and just value the things that we have. There are assets in the city, and something like this, because it represents people that are deceased, that goes really deep inside of people's emotions and feelings. I don't know of anything that people have stronger feelings about than, like death. Like if ever a gravesite or a cemetery is vandalized, oh my goodness, everyone is really up in arms. It's something very, very important for people. And for that reason alone, I think we need to keep this, and we made a decision a while back. We need to be better about following through with the things that we have. All these things are like heirlooms for our city. And one day, down the road, I think that will become much more valuable than you realize. You know, sometimes it's like antiques or whatever. You know, you think this is really no good, it's old. But then, you know, if you hold on to it 20 years later, it's super valuable. I really think this will go that way. So I think we should take care of this. If you need to already, people have said that they offered money for the repairs. And I think that when you have someone willing to fix something, that is really wrong to tell them go away, you know, because they already have a big investment in it.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, others, Alderperson Dorff.
Thank you. I just want to clarify two things. First, it's my understanding that $250 wasn't raised for this, but that is the value of the monument according to insurance costs, and that services were donated to put it together. Am I wrong about that, or is that indeed the case?
I don't have an exact answer for you on that. You'd have to check with the donor groups to get that information. They told us it was valued at $250,000 in their proposal.
I believe it's value. Yes, I know. I believe the value is there. I don't think it was a fundraiser for that amount of money. Secondly, I'm wondering, was $14,000 or whatever the amount was that we discussed at council, a little over $14,000? Is that really enough to fix what needed to be fixed? And if not, how much would it cost to fix what needs to be fixed?
Well, when we first got the estimates in 2009, they were looking at, like I said before, $36,000 to $38,000. And that was just to fix the granite.
And more needed to be fixed. That's just
And more
that
needed to
there
be
were
fixed,
some
correct.
names that and dates or
And
something
those are
was incorrect.
2009
Numbers.
estimates, so they'll certainly be higher than that
Okay.
at this
So,
point.
Yeah,
All right.
the cracks and the deterioration has occurred very rapidly after the monument was built, according to what I've been told. But it's been 8 years since it was before this committee to talk about what to do about it. So, you know, here we are, and we're trying to address this seriously, to try to figure out, you know, what the solution is. I guess as a member of this committee, you know, I sure wish a lot of this information had come forward. It was on agendas of meetings, you know, starting in June, and you know, I don't think anyone in this committee wanted to disrespect the purpose of the monument, the people that had raised funds, as well as, you know, the people who were honoring with the monument. It was just trying to figure out what is a good solution. And, you know, it was, if you look back at the minutes, even in 2009, it was made real clear in the minutes that the city didn't have the money to do it. So, you know, it was a private project, and, you know, certainly if someone wishes to come forward and lead an effort to raise the funds to do it right, I think that would be welcome.
Alternate, I was going to address that too. You know, well, it's unfortunate that people didn't come forward in June. I think it's good that now they have come forward. You know, so we don't need to admire the problem anymore. Let's move forward now and see what we can do about it. 9/11 certainly strikes many of our hearts. We all of us, I bet, remember exactly where we were and what we were doing on that day. And it's certainly something that I feel we should have a memorial for in our city. So now let's move on and start figuring out what are we going to do and what is the best thing. And Parks, I think you're the right committee to come up with the right solution. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, just as with the original construction of the monument, there were a lot of in-kind donations. That may be what you get. You might get a lot of in-kind donations as well when it's repaired. But, typically when the city has a monument, we expect it to last longer than this did. And, that was unfortunate, and I don't mean to be blaming anybody. It was, it was just something that occurred. I was out at Bay Beach earlier this week, and there's a monument out there that was erected, I think, in 1956 or 57. And there isn't any erosion on it or any deterioration on it. And we're looking for something with some permanence here if we're going to do something. So,
I just wanted to give something for the committee.
okay, yeah.
This has been some, I guess, area of belief or disbelief, but I first should say Mr. Jim Sanderson called me today. He's working, he can't be here at this meeting, but he gave me a rather long narrative about, there's no short conversations with Jim. But anyway, gave me a long narrative. He did watch the construction of it, and he was impressed at how solidly the base was built and how deep it was done, and it was done with whatever they put into cement to make it stronger and all those sorts of things. And his words were that, well, he thought it would take an earthquake to break it. But he thought the foundation at least was very, very sound. Now, how the marble was applied, et cetera, the etching, all the quality of the marble, all that sort of thing, maybe isn't right for our weather here. I don't know. But there was some discussion about whether anything was placed into the monument. And there definitely were things.
Okay.
Ms. Jack can testify to, but I do have a picture, which I'll give to you for the record here. It's a picture of Barb Jack, Mike Maladnik, who came to our council meeting. His brother was one that died, that was mentioned by Bernie a little earlier, and the man from, representative from Myron Construction. And they did bury a canister, whatever you want to call it, that I've been told, I can't prove anything or anything, but I've been told, and the reason it was put there was there were some things that were supposedly even blessed by the Pope and by our local bishop, and there may have been some relics, human relics, also placed into it. But you can see by this picture that was taken that there definitely was something placed in the monument, to be buried in the monument that's in the middle of the base somewhere. And I'll just give that
Okay.
for your record here.
Maybe we can talk about that issue about what is in there.
I don't know that that makes a difference,
Well,
but it is something there. Something was buried there, and I guess people have forgotten that anything was buried there. But, and again, to get into an argument and get it to be a subterfuge, that becomes a separate argument outside of what do we, the only decision we have to make, I think, is are we going to repair it and put it in a quality manner that it will endure our environment here, or are we going to scrap it for something less? And I think the speakers so far have been pretty clear. They thought we should refix it, as I do. Thank you.
okay. I think there is a lot of interest in what is in it, just for the sake of knowing what is there. And,
Let's assume there was nothing. Let's say there was, that condition wasn't even a variable here. Would that make any difference of whether we're going to do it or not? So I don't think we should, I think it's good to find out whatever information for history purposes, whatever history we can. We know something, we now know there's something buried in there. But that really isn't specific to whether we want the monument to continue or not.
I understand. Well, if there are people here that would like to explain what was done, what is in there, I'd like to hear it. Or if there are any documents, anything, I'd like to know what's there. You have anything you want to add?
I do, but it's not something that I'm gonna be talking about with the news here and
Okay.
be telling everybody. I would talk to Chris and Guy, like I thought that was gonna be happening tonight, versus sharing it and having the press be calling people.
Yeah.
So I'm not prepared to be
Okay.
doing that tonight.
Okay. Okay. How about some of the other questions that were raised in the discussion at council? I think there was some reference to a 100-year agreement that the city agreed to.
Yeah, it was called a maintenance agreement. I have that also tonight to show them that George, he was the one that did all the documenting and did all the paperwork and stuff. And he made 50-year agreements when we were dealing with Dane County and Madison.
Okay.
And he made a 100-year one for Green Bay. And he gave it to Mr. Schmidt the day that it was dedicated.
Okay,
But
so-
George is the one, he passed away. He's the one that had copies and did all the paperwork. And I don't have that. I
So it
just know
wasn't-
what he said and what
Okay.
happened, you know.
So it was an agreement that was signed by someone from the city?
George and, I signed it first, then George signed it with Mayor Schmidt when, he had another piece of paper that he gave him at the end of the ceremony that says we gave the memorial to Green Bay.
Okay.
And again, you know, I can't get that stuff from George. And as far as somebody asked about the gals in front of me about the money, a lot of it was raised, a lot of it was donated, like we did all the landscaping with the Landscape Federation, we're landscapers. People did the cement work and the rebar. They donated their services. And then they totaled up how much it would have been, that's where we got the price from.
Mhm. Are you willing to work on it again if some fundraising is needed to complete?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any questions for the committee? Anyone else want to address the committee on this?
Return to regular order.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Motion by Alderman Weary, second by Alderman Vanderleest to return to the regular order of business. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, what are your wishes?
I'd like to just make a comment that, from talking to different people in my own district and throughout the city, that I think there's a sentiment that people would like to see the memorial stay where it's at and to be reconditioned in a proper manner. And I think that's what we should follow that avenue as far as making an all-out effort to get all the facts and see how we want to proceed forward and see if we can get some public funding. And we got to have city funding, some city funding. That's, you know, we should explore those avenues and, you know, see if we can't get the monument back up to proper speed as far as appearance. And it is a nice monument as far as, you know, it's in a nice location, and I think it's very beneficial for our community. That's my thoughts.
Okay, other comments?
I guess, I don't think we need to suspend the rules, but I think the mayor's staff is here. Does he have an opinion on how he'd like to proceed?
You're asking me, Alderman Weary, if the mayor has an opinion?
Yeah, you're just chief of staff, right?
So he, you know, this is a legislative body. He wants to see what your decision is. He was comfortable with the decision from the subcommittee that went through Parks and then through the council. That's what I got.
Yeah. When the decision was made, there really was not a lot of public input. And, you know, with the attention it's gotten the last week, you know, I have to agree with that. A lot of citizens would like to see something done with it. You know, it may be these days that it might be possible to raise the money that's needed to do it. You know, I don't know, but people raise money for a lot of things, and I know in researching this a little, we may have been the first one, but there are a lot of other ones around Wisconsin now, and many of them have raised private funding to put in monuments. So a almost all of the monuments have some piece of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, or the site in Pennsylvania that have been included in the monuments. So you know, that certainly was something that I think we were the first, at least in the state, maybe in the nation at the time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would say, as we were discussing this over the past year, I don't know, people really weren't, as with a lot of things, paying attention, everybody's busy. And then when it finally was determined that we were going to move it and take it down, that's when people kind of, all of a sudden took, great attention. I think it's the old saying, you don't know what you have till it's gone. When people realize something's gone, whoa, hold on a minute. And then that's when people started, whoa, really giving their opinion that it really meant a lot to them where it is. And they didn't want it perhaps tucked away somewhere where the public couldn't see it. Not that that would have been a bad option, but I think this is a much better option. And so whether we hold this to try and get some of the information and slowly work it forward, or we want to approve something tonight, whether it's 30,000, 40, 50, 100,000. I mean, you've seen, dedicated groups of people can raise $1 million for Colburn, $500,000 for Fisk Pool. They can do it. And so this amount of money, touches a lot of people. I'm sure it can be fundraised. I'm sure we could get some people to donate time if that's the route we want to go. Be interested to see what the committee would want to do. If we'd want to, over the next couple of weeks, gather some of this information about what might be in there and get some ideas on what it would take to fix it. I'm for keeping it there. I would just like a little more information.
Yeah, I have to agree that, for the city, this thing was donated to the city. It's owned by the city. And, whether it's relevant to our decision here now or a decision people will make 50 years from now, it's good to have documents of what's there and what kind of commitments there were. If there was a commitment, it's kind of interesting. A lot of the steel from the World Trade Center that was distributed to various communities around the country didn't happen until 2009 or 2010. So this was kind of remarkable to get something so early in the process. And maybe we didn't keep as much documentation on it at the city as we should have at the time. But as staffs change and things, it's good to have good records. So I do think we need to do that. And if the folks that were involved in it back then are willing to meet with some of us individually and try to gather, put as much together as we can, I think it would be helpful. At least I'd appreciate it. Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing I wanted to remind you is that, the monument itself really is a tourist attraction. We're always trying to bring people to downtown Green Bay. We have a lot of competition, a lot of serious competition to the south of us. And of course, we're trying to do what we can to make the downtown an attractive place, a place where people want to come. Well, something that can be an attraction, of course, is, and it can be put into the folks who promote Green Bay in brochures and that. This is the sort of thing that can be put into there and attract people to that area. So, besides it being something that honors and makes them try to remember forever the kind of assault that was done on the United States of America, the fact that that is so important in our history and that it's in our downtown and can be used to attract people and help keep our downtown strong. I think it's important that it stays there and doesn't just find its way into some lonely dustbin, or maybe that's overstating it, but something that it would diminish it. What we have there needs to be, if anything, enhanced. And I don't think we should do anything to diminish it. And if you're struggling for a motion or something, I think you should make a motion that the chairman put together a committee of citizens and see if we can do some kind of fundraising, and let's start doing the legwork to set the goals that need to be set to do the right thing. Because, you know, really, the city at very least has a moral obligation. We accepted this. And then we're going to trash it. I don't think it's the sort of thing you can trash. From what I hear, your sentiments are similar. But it's, we have a moral obligation to keep up the property that we accepted. We don't build a ride out at Bay Beach and not maintain it. We don't take parks and not maintain them. It's something that I think is an important part of our community. And so I think the committee should at least have a commitment that the city is going to work with, maybe make a motion that the city will work with the public to preserve and enhance and maintain the monument in its present location. I think that would show the community that you're serious about wanting to do something about it. Now, the other thing I just anecdotally would put in, I have had at least 100 contacts, again, casual contacts, and a couple through emails, etc. I've only had one person that was opposed to it. There's one that just thought it was ridiculous or something, he didn't think it was important. That was one out of all the people I talked to. So nothing's ever unanimous. But I think the sentiment is that that should be maintained and kept and honored and not be diminished. Because that's, if we take the action that we originally took, it would be diminishing it. It would not be giving it a prominent place, and it will not become a tourist attraction. Continue to be a tourist attraction. And I think I said at the council meeting, I drive by it myself, because my office is close to the downtown. I drive by it anywhere from 2 to 5, 6 times a day. And very often I see people there taking pictures. Before our last council meeting, I went there and there were just people casually there. In fact, one of them, they were so distraught about it, they actually came to the meeting and spoke. But the public, as Mr. Weary says, sometimes you don't realize things until you think it's too late, but it's not too late for us. We can easily pull this out of the fire and do the right thing with it. I think we've got a moral obligation to keep it, and I think it's a positive thing for our community, not a negative thing.
Okay, thank you. Motion by the committee? I know what you're saying, Guy, that it may not matter what's in there or, what the agreement was or any of that, but I really think that we need to try to gather the answers to a lot of these questions, because I know many of our colleagues...
Well, I'm not opposed to that at all.
I think many of our colleagues have questions about it, and I would like more information before I would vote on it.
So, Mr. Chairman, what type of motion are you looking for?
Well, I would ask that we, table it till the next meeting and try to meet with the people who were involved in it, gather whatever information we can. I think the questions that Alderman Weary posed are pretty much the questions people are asking. I think we should sit down and try to get some answers so that we can deal with it in a responsible manner, and also to invite people who have an interest in assisting with the fundraising to come forward, and perhaps appoint a committee. That may include council members that would work on fundraising, as well as other people in the community. So,
That's the motion you're looking for?
yeah, something to that
Mr.
effect.
Chairman, I think you got to do something stronger than that. That is about as weak-wristed a motion I could ever think of.
Okay, Alderman Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I get the gist of, I think, what everybody's trying to do here. And my motion would be that the City of Green Bay work towards preserving the existing 9/11 monument. And then as part of that, the next step would be some basic fact-finding and some options. So we're saying we want to preserve this, and then under that umbrella, we're going to do some fact-finding for, for future, what exactly is in there. Are there some things in place that gives us maybe some more concrete guidance, and then, what options are there? How much is it going to cost to fix it? I mean, we all know that there's some people in the community who will step up and help, and I think the city can do as well for something like this. So that's my motion. At least moves it forward, and whether we come back in 2 weeks, I mean, I'll gladly work with you, Ms. Jacks, to help uncover some of this information. Some of it you didn't think you'd need ever again, and you're struggling to find it, and you're doing a good job of finding some of it.
Mr. Weir, on that motion, can you also ask that what Donnie read to the committee earlier about conditions with which the monument was given be put into the record? So that, because I actually never heard it before, and
That's a good idea. Yeah, I guess I hadn't seen that either. Could you include that in the
report?
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, but that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'd second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay. I have a feeling it's going to be on our agenda a number of times before we get to the end of it, but let's get something. Okay. Okay, next item, number 2, is consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman Duane to change the deer hunting ordinance to hunt within the city limits from 100 yards to 50 yards with written permission from the neighbors. I think Mike Reed is here to address the committee on this, to explain it. As I understand it, this pertains to bow hunting and crossbows?
Correct. It's only archery, which includes both crossbows and other bows.
And currently, the ordinance says that you can hunt with a crossbow or a bow within 100 feet of a neighboring building, the neighbor's building, if you have permission from the neighbor. And what Alderman Duane is suggesting is that we make it 50 yards rather than...
It's 100 yards,
Yes.
just, yeah, it's not 100 feet, it's 100 yards of a neighboring structure, of an inhabited structure. That's the way it reads right now. So it would be reducing it from 100 yards to 50 yards,
50, making it more restrictive.
or less restrictive. Right now, it's at, well, it was, and this all was precipitated with Act 71 in 2013. With that act, cities were not allowed to restrict archery hunting within their city limits and make it more restrictive than the DNR regulations, which is 100 yards within, you cannot hunt within 100 yards of an inhabited structure without permission from the landowners. So what the proposal was, we have some, because of Act 71, private lands were no longer managed by the city deer hunt. Only public lands were managed. The city could not determine by ordinance the distance not to exceed 100 yards. That permission was required by adjacent landowners to address problems caused by deer in city neighborhoods where little or no appropriate public land is available to place a hunter. We are proposing that the distance a hunter on private land needs to obtain permission from adjacent landowners is reduced from the current 100 yards to 50 yards. This would reduce the burden on a landowner who wanted to hunt on their property and encourage more landowners to help the city reduce the deer population in areas of high negative deer activity. After we met with the Department of Natural Resources and the Green Bay Police Department, it was found that other surrounding municipalities have a 50-yard ordinance, and it is working well. The Green Bay Police Department did not see any, did not regard the change as a public safety issue.
So I'm just trying to get it clear in my mind. So over 50, and maybe our attorney would be the best one to ask, over 50, if we make this change, over 50 yards away from a neighboring building, you would be able to bow hunt, or you would not be able to bow hunt? I know that within 50 yards, you need permission from the neighboring property owner, but what about over 50 yards?
So if we make the change to 50 yards, that means that if it's 50 and farther, they would not need permission anymore.
They could still bow hunt, crossbow, and
Yes,
so on.
that's correct.
Okay.
So anything within 50 yards, they would then need permission.
Okay.
So as it stands now, it's at 100 yards.
Okay. Okay. So, any questions?
Nope.
No?
So it's 50 yards or more.
That's what the proposal is.
Right.
You would no longer need permission.
Well, you wouldn't need permission from
Over
50 yards or more
yards.
on private property?
On private property.
So I could be on someone's private property as long as I'm 50 yards away from their inhabited dwelling?
Structure, any inhabited structure.
No, I think
With
you have to be on your own property.
Yeah, you
your
have
own
to,
property.
well, someone could, it has to be that landowner, they could give permission to someone else.
Right, but I just can't go on like Chief's backyard 50 yards away in his woods or wherever and start shooting deer.
It
So
has
I
to be
need
the
permission.
landowner
Okay,
himself
That's what I thought.
who he gave permission to.
Right, okay.
Is that provision that you have to discharge the arrow or bolt toward the ground, is that still
So
part of
all the other DNR regulations apply, so it has to be discharged from an elevated stand down towards the ground, and they have to have the proper license and, tags and everything else.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary to approve the request. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you,
Mike,
Mike.
what's your office number?
391-3675.
3675. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll be forwarding this ordinance to the council. Okay, director's report. Number 3.
All right, the playground at Atkinson Park finally completed. Well, almost. No, it is completed. Crews are regrading the infields at Seven Diamonds, so they're ready for the spring. Tree pruning is now at Edison Park area. We recently pruned on Park Street, Lark Street, and Elmore Street on the west side. The extra shelter is also now completed. The west end train at Bay Beach was bid out and awarded at lowest bidder. Construction should begin in a few weeks. The contract at Colburn Pool with the engineering consultant has been finalized.
Approved.
Staff met with the manufacturer of the proposed pool liner to learn more about the product and design details for our pool renovation. The engineering consultant and architect met with city staff to begin the process for site work for the renovations for the building. Work continues on the Fox River Trail replacement. All of the excavation has been completed and the gravel has been placed. The second annual Haunted Chase Race will take place on October 14th at the Bay Beach Wildlife Sanctuary. And registration is now open for our indoor swim lessons. Session 1 begins October 19th, and it is filling very, very fast. There are very few openings remaining. Bay Beach is now closed for the season. However, the month of October, we have Saturday events that occur. This week, we have the craft show. The next Saturday, we have the Honda Chase Race, and then on the 21st, we have the duathlon. The Autumn Adventure, sponsored by the Thursday Breakfast Optimist Club, will be held on Saturday, September 30th, from 10 to 2, and that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions?
Motion to receive and
Dan,
place
in
on
the
file.
duathlon?
Second.
In the duathlon?
The motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Vanderleest to approve to receive and place on file the director's report. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. I'll then entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Weary to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.
Do you have that copy?
Yeah.
It's just a double check.
Yeah.